This video is by Straight Goods News, SGNews.ca.
I come from Winnipeg. I'm born and raised there, and I got involved in the union in 1980 at the clerical regulatory strike, so the infamous CR strike. And I was a single mom, a term, 2 small children, and I got a phone call and I was on the picket line. And so then when my children were growing up, I didn't get involved for another 5 years, if you will. I went to my union meetings, but in 1985 I ran for treasurer of my local. I became president of my local. I was the regional vice president for my component, the Union of Taxation Employees, and then I was elected regional executive vice president for the Prairies in 2000 and subsequently re-elected until May of this year when I was elected president of the PSAC.
I see. And how has union activism changed for you over those years? And what are the issues, the people, the atmosphere? I
think that in terms of government, because now, of course, I'm with the Canada Revenue Agency, so we're sort of at arm's length from the government. I haven't been in that workplace in 12 years, mind you, but the reality is that it's been government after government that seems to be eroding our public services and the work that we do. And so it's about talking to the public and letting them know. So for us, it's about workplace issues, grievances, the usual things that unions do, negotiations, representation, but now we have an even bigger fight in terms of this particular government.
Well, it seems that one government after another has eroded the public services, you said. I remember there were big cuts in the 1990s, I believe.
In the mid-1990s, there were 45,000 jobs that were cut from the federal government. During that period, when the cuts came, we had processes in place where those who wanted to stay could stay, those who wanted to leave could leave. We had what we called most affected departments and least affected departments. And then, of course, the next government that came in not only froze our wages but also froze our increments. So I think we've suffered at the hands of various governments. This particular government, though, seems to be doing cuts with no rhyme or reason that we can see at this point in time.
I guess the previous governments merely found you convenient to cut, whereas this government seems to be ideologically actually opposed to public service.
That is the very real difference. I think that in the mid-90s and subsequently they just did cuts because they wanted to say we have a smaller federal government or we were trying to balance some so-called deficit. This particular government, I don't think really wants to have government workers at all. I think that if they could contract out all of our work, that's indeed what they would do.
Before we get into talking about this government more, I want to just talk a little bit more about you and your new position in life as president of the Public Service Alliance. How have things changed for you since moving from Winnipeg to Ottawa?
Well, certainly I think Ottawa is a very different city than the prairies, but I'll tell you what I've told many people is you can take the girl out of the prairies, but you can't take the prairies out of the girl. And so from my leadership style, it's about our members. And so we're getting back to basics, if you will. It's about workplace representation. It's about our union being meaningful to the members because our union is the members and the members are the union.
How does that play out? What does that mean in operational terms when you say that?
In operational terms, with respect to our representation, if you look at how the PSAC is structured, we have directly chartered locals, and then we have 17 different components, and so we're going to work collectively as one. We're going to move forward to 2015 in terms of the next election, and we're going to be a force to be reckoned with as a whole. So we're not going to be fractured, and we're going to look to having the same banner, the same communication in the same way forward.
Okay, now let's talk a bit about federal politics, or let's focus on federal politics. As we've said, you're dealing with a government that really doesn't seem to want public servants or public service workers or public services. There seems to be there is a large ideological opposition to the work that a lot of your people do. Could you list some of the dangers and threats that you see? that are likely to be posed?
Well, certainly, what we've looked at in terms of the cuts so far, there's about 20,000 letters that have gone out to our membership alone, let alone the other unions that are with the federal government. The reality is that this government has said they will be cutting 19,200 jobs. We know that they will also be doing cuts through attrition, and so we're losing services to Canadians. We are all affected by what this government is doing, and that's our signature campaign for the PSAC. Until 2015, we are all affected because each Canadian in this country is affected, whether that's that they have to wait 2 more years to get old age security, and when in fact they get it, what the waiting time will be because the service officers have been cut. The employment insurance is delayed because we don't have enough service officers. There's search and rescue where they're closing down actual bases such as Kitsilano. Food safety. I mean, we've just recently gone through a huge beef recall, and we have the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, our members, who want to do their job. But when the government says that some of these companies should be self-regulated because that's where they're moving more and more to, we see what happens with self-regulation. They need to have government workers. We provide services that Canadians need so that they actually, if unemployed, can receive a check to put food on the table, and the food they put on the table needs to be safe for consumption. So there's many areas that this government is cutting that I don't think they've given much thought to.
So that's the first problem, which is these huge and poorly planned cuts, or maybe they're not so poorly planned. And then there's the direct attacks on unions in general and your union in particular. Could you talk about some of them?
Well, we certainly have several MPs that are wanting to attack the PSAC. If you look at what Poilievre has been talking about with the RAND formula, and that he's going to do away with the RAND formula, I mean, that's just smoke and mirrors. That's so that he can talk about that, get people excited about it, when in fact he's just pulling away from what's actually happening in government today, and that's the cuts that they're doing. So if you can take Canadians and speak to them about something like the RAND formula, instead of actually speaking to them about the services that they're going to be losing, then I think that he feels he'll be successful. So in my mind, it's to take people's thoughts off of the services they're losing and onto something else.
Do you think then that he will not go through with his fairly clear threats?
Well, he certainly hasn't produced a bill, and I don't believe that he can actually do the bill himself. He would have to have someone else do a private member's bill. You know, the reality is that we've talked to our members. Our members know the value of a union, and I think that from our perspective, our membership will start to tell all of their MPs that they know the value of their union, that their union is there to protect their rights in the workplace and in their communities.
Of course, the private members bill is far from inconceivable from this government. There's Bill 377, sponsored by Ross Hebert, the so-called union disclosure bill. Are you involved in the fight against that?
We certainly will be looking at that and speaking to MPs. I mean, if you have Mr. Clement talking to big business about trying to cut red tape and so that they don't have too much in the way of paperwork to do, why are you then turning around with a private member's bill, which is really legislation from this government disguised as a private member's bill, and it's going to put even more red tape and more paperwork and a burden on the unions. And quite frankly, from the PSAC's perspective, our financial statements are available to our membership. We have delegates who debate our budget, who know exactly where the money is going. They make that decision at the convention, and then we post our financial statements on our website. They're in our minutes of our National Board of Directors. So really, from our perspective, we're very open, very transparent. And once again, I think it's just smoke and mirrors so that they can take away from what they're actually doing and put public opinion and attraction on the union versus the cuts that they're actually making.
Yeah, they're trying to vilify unions in order to distract people from the impact of their policies, you're telling me. Tell me more about the campaign then, to inform Canadians as to how they're affected and how you're going to try to mobilize people against these cuts.
In terms of the We're All Affected, it's not just about the job loss, it's the services. So we're actually going out to Canadians. We had a national day, September 15th, where we came together, not only ourselves as PSAC members, but allies from the community, other labor organizations. So we all came together and we were talking about the services that will be gone. So we're continuing to do that outreach. We're going to actually talk to Canadians and do some profiles on Canadians with respect to services that are gone. You know, certainly coming from the prairies, we received a letter from one of our pasture riders' wives, and she talked about not only was her partner losing his job, but she was also losing her home. So there are those kinds of stories out there that Canadians, I believe, will step forward and start to talk from the heart about what they're losing with this government.
And you'll be encouraging Canadians to do that?
We certainly will, because who better to speak to Canadians but Canadians? And so it's not about the union, you know, being out there saying, well, our jobs are being cut. It's about us working collectively with all Canadians to say, these are the services that you will be missing. They will be gone. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, because they have a 3-year plan, but these services will be gone.
We attended a bit of the convention last May where you were elected president, and I recall that an aggressive program, a political program, was adopted by your members. Can you tell me a little bit more about what the next 3 years are going to look like in the run-up to the next federal?
The next 3 years will be about We Are All Affected. So that's what our campaign will be based on, and it'll be a community campaign, if you will. It'll be about talking to Canadians. It'll be about hearing from Canadians, and certainly about us talking to those labor-friendly candidates that are running in municipal elections, provincial elections, and of course talking to labor-friendly MPs that are currently in the House. So it's going to be a well-rounded campaign with respect to we need change, and we need a government that appreciates Canadians and that is going to treat us with dignity and respect, each and every one of us.
Other thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Just that I think that as we move forward through to 2015, that if we can start looking at what Canada is losing and how we need to recover from that, looking at security, not just for ourselves in terms of employment, but for seniors as well, because this is a government, this is a prime minister who went to another country and announced that he was increasing the age from 65 to 67 for OAS, and I was surprised that there was not a hue and cry from Canadians, and I think we need to talk to Canadians and mobilize each and every one of them.